Welcome to Never Again is Now, a podcast about anti-Semitism. I am Evelyn Marcus.
And I am Phyllis Zimbler Miller.
The Jewish community in the Netherlands, which was decimated by 80% during the Holocaust, feels vulnerable again. Jews in Holland face harsh and hateful criticism of Israel from friends and media, anti-Semitic slurs in demonstrations, and sometimes threats. On March 10, Holland opened its National Holocaust Museum, 80 years after the Holocaust. The ceremony was meant to be a moment of togetherness in memorizing the darkest page in Dutch history, with the King of the Netherlands, the President of Israel, the heads of states of Germany and Austria, and Dutch Holocaust survivors and Jewish leaders present. But it was overshadowed by loud and vile anti-Israel and anti-Semitic protests at the other side of the street. Esther Voet, editor-in-chief of the Netherlands' main Jewish weekly, NIW, or Nieuw Israelitisch Weekblad, discusses this with us today. Esther, welcome, and thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thanks for having me.
Today I asked the first question. What happened at the protest?
What happened was that there was early in the morning a very clear area where anti-Israel protesters could protest. And during the ceremony, some protesters went on another corner of the street, closer to the museum, and started to shout vile, horrible things. You could hear it from inside the synagogue very clearly. And it was
clarify, the initial ceremony was at the Portuguese synagogue, is that correct?
Yes, and from there on they moved to the museum.
Okay.
And there was the mezuzah was attached and that was outside. But people who were in the synagogue heard clearly what was happening. And the mayor said ahead that it was there could be some friction. Well, it was more than friction. So people inside the esnoga, as we call it, the synagogue, very clearly heard the protests, and the protesters moved to another part of the street. The mayor said that it was spontaneous. That's not true. We have proof that on TikTok it was very clear that this was an intentional demonstration, not on the corner that was for them, reserved for them. So it completely got out of hand. And the people were shouting the most horrible things. Oprotten kankerjoden. That was
Cancer
said.
Jews, Jews, get out.
Get out, cancer Jews. Zionist, Hamas is my brother. Well, of course, the free Palestine from the river to the sea, and whatever you can think of. And nobody did anything. Nobody did anything. I know that from the top in the police, the triangle, as we call it, that's the mayor, the police, and the juridical part, the OM, Openbaar Ministerie.
The prosecutor.
They decided that they wanted to play it down as much as possible, and so they gave these people carte blanche.
Can I ask a clarifying question because of different laws in different countries? And recently, Evelyn and I have been talking to a lot of people in different countries. What could, in terms of freedom of expression, First Amendment rights that we call the United States, what could they have done?
Wait a minute. There are several things they could have done. First, they could have taken care that these demonstrators wouldn't have been around this area. They could have gone to the Dam or to the Museumplein, wherever. That's the right to demonstrate, no problem. But they decided that it should be within the reach, ear's reach. I don't understand why. Second, she could have
mayor.
said, okay, the mayor, yes. She could have said, well, I'm sorry, but this is too tricky for safety reasons and so on. So we are deciding that we're not gonna give the permission. She didn't do that either. And thirdly, she could have taken care that she would have known what the intention was of the demonstrators. They wanted to move closer to the synagogue and to the museum in order to make, as they say in Hebrew, balagan, chaos. That's what's happened. That's what happened. And the most terrible thing was that there is this Holocaust survivor, Rudy Cortisos, who had the honor of fixing the menorah of the mezuzah on the museum, and the organization especially requested Rudy to be there with his great-granddaughter, and she's 5 years old. So she was standing there with the king. Big happening for her. She was already a little bit shy because she was the center of attention.
Wait, this is at the museum now or still at the Portuguese Synagogue?
In front of the door of the museum. So they went to the museum and
Yeah,
there.
I know exactly where it is, so I can visualize. Okay.
Okay, so it's a 50 meters walk. And this child and this survivor of the Holocaust heard everything that was
And the king
shouted. The king, of course, too. But you know, they played their act, and after that they moved. But also the other people who were in the synagogue, who later had to walk to the museum for the lunch that was in the museum, they all had to go through this.
And getting scolded as Jews.
Jews, they call it Zionists. They call it Zionists.
Okay.
And they used the fact that the president of Israel was there. And as we all know, Bogi Herzog, he is a peacenik. He brings parties together, and they said that they used it as an excuse that because of the president of Israel being there, they made such chaos, and they said the most horrible things. Well, the president was already invited the end of July, before the whole thing of 7 October started. They just used it as an excuse to show their hatred. And it was real hatred. The pictures that we see, you see hate. This is not a demonstration for some kind of freedom. This is shouting out hate. This is what happened.
Yes. And
so I think they made the wrong decisions, the very wrong decisions.
You mean the city? I mean the mayor and the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I hear you say is it was hatred of Jews. It was hatred of the Jewish state, not criticism or pro-Palestinian only, but hatred towards the Jewish state and the Jewish
if you say Hamas,
sorry, go ahead.
If you say head of state, if you say Hamas is my brother, if you have it over about go away, you dirty Zionists, you horrible Zionists. We all know that they use Zionist as a synonym for the word Jews. And there were recordings that somebody said that you hear voices that say, go dirty Jews, kankerjoden, what we just said.
Cancer Jews, yeah.
Yeah, And according to the mayor, that was not a real recording. Well, we saw it in real time. So
Yeah.
it's I think there are dirty games being played in order to whitewash the whole thing.
Right. And also, even if you say, okay, criticism of Zionism would be allowed, but at that moment, how many
there,
Jews would have been saved if there would have been a Jewish state of Israel in
Oh, yeah.
1940 till 1945?
I
How many,
completely agree with you, but
right?
this is not how these people think.
And how every Jew present must have thought how happy we are today there is a Jewish state of Israel. So if we say never again about ourselves, then we think of Israel as the safe space for us to go.
All
And
those activists and those demonstrators want us out of here, out of the country.
Yes, they want Jews.
They say go to Israel, and once we are in Israel, they don't want us to be in Israel.
Right.
Where should we go?
Yeah.
You know, it's so hypocrite. It's
Right.
so hypocrite.
Also, the head of state of Israel, President Herzog, is okay. He's a peacenik, but he's also it's a symbolic
Exactly.
a function like the king,
Yeah.
like the king.
He's not like
has.
Netanyahu. He doesn't make any policy.
Right.
He's just a symbol like the king is. But you know, what we are already saying to each other, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know that Israel is only measuring the half of the Netherlands. They don't know how many Jews there are in the Netherlands, 30,000. They don't know anything. There are people who are answering that there are 1 million Jews in the Netherlands. Well, sorry. You know, the lack of knowledge is incredible, and they're not interested in knowledge.
Yes.
They're not at all interested in knowledge, because I spoke to a very famous singer here in the Netherlands today, just half an hour ago, Lenny Koer. She won the Eurovision Song Contest in '69. And there were demonstrators yesterday at a concert of her somewhere in the east of the country. Very quiet community, a very quiet city, Waalwijk. And she said something very, very good. She said, what I saw was hatred, and demonstrators stopped her concert. And she said, and I agree with her, I saw hatred and I saw anger, but what mainly I saw was frustration with people who have an ideology that isn't ours, that isn't good for us. And she's talking about Western society. And I saw a frustration that didn't start with this war and won't end with this war. This is frustration about the things that they are lacking and in their life. All the mistakes that they are making in their life, the lives that are not succeeding, they're projecting on this conflict now. I think she's right. It's an excuse to go berserk, to just go berserk.
Scapegoating of the Jew.
Yeah, she said it's like an infection that broke open.
Is that are we talking in the case of the demonstrations with the opening of the museum and the protests, the stopping of the concert of Lenny Koer yesterday or this last weekend? What are we talking about? Protesters from white supremacists? Are we talking about the ultra left? Are we talking about Muslims, immigrants? Who are we talking about?
I saw it developing since 2014. 2014, I was the director of CIDI, Center for Information and Documentation Israel, and there was a war going on there then. And this was at the start of social media like Twitter. And what you saw was that there were a lot of anonymous accounts, often from, by far the most Muslims. You can see it at the language and what they're tweeting. Also, if you watch their timeline, you really know where they come from. It was also extreme right, and it was the extreme left. This is the Kongsi, you know, les extrêmes touches, as they say in French. In French,
all the extremes together.
Yes. From there, you saw that the anonymous accounts, it wasn't stopped. Yes, because freedom of expression.
Right.
You saw from there that people started to use their own name. People weren't ashamed anymore. And you saw it spreading from, the most aggressive was the Muslim community. I had 2 persons convicted for their threats towards me. And from there you saw it spreading more and more and more. And it's a Kongsi of the ultra-left, some anarchist groups, very vocal, small groups that spread like oil, like wildfire. And especially now with this conflict, when everybody is not only on Twitter, X, I should say these days, or Facebook, but also you've got TikTok and you've got Instagram. People influence each other. They don't listen to real news anymore, although there's a lot to say about the way the conflict is shown here by the main news outlets. And it's become a tsunami, and it can't be stopped. The genie is out of the bottle. And the biggest thing is, from the police, from mayors, from law or whatever, they don't give borders. They don't give borders.
Limits.
So every time, the limits, exactly. Yep. So every time people are moving a little bit further and further and further and further. And we are very proud as the Dutch of being very tolerant. And we don't see that the shadow side of tolerance is cowardness. And this is what's happening.
Esther, I would like to read a quote, because what you just said about frustration. This book was published in 1933 by an American journalist called by Edgar Myer, Germany Puts the Clock Back. And I want to read one short paragraph that's exactly what you just said. Since they, meaning the Germans, had lost the war, since they were poor and worried and bewildered, since they had been taught to believe themselves a wrong and humiliated nation, the question inevitably arose, how could such a situation come to be? No people likes to admit its own failings. Where, therefore, could the responsibility be put, if not on the Jew in their midst, the hateful foreign body and the otherwise flawless German organism? In short, the suffering German hated the Jew rather than see himself as he was. And so what frightens me is what you just said is a repeat.
Exactly. And I always say the only way we can tackle this is by very young, already in kindergarten, learn children how their brain works. And I'm talking about biodynamics. That you have this hardwire, that you want to be in a group, that you feel safe in a group, that a group, in order to feel itself stronger, needs a scapegoat. Huh? Every class has a scapegoat. And it's in the people's hardwire. And I think that doesn't come across good enough or isn't taught enough. Like, guys, this is who we are. We are animals who still want to have the security of the group, and who divides, even in the classroom, itself in subgroups. You have subgroup loyalty, and you get intergroup warfare. And the scapegoat always needs to be there in order for the group to feel stronger. And I think a big part of what's happening right now is exactly that. And because Jews are only very little here, I said 30,000 people, most of the Dutch have never met a Jew. Most of the people have never met a Jew. So it's very easy to blame all kinds of stuff on this very little group that you don't know anything about, that you've heard of in the past, that has been blamed for centuries now. And anyway, so why not again? There must be something wrong with them, and so on and so forth. It's a very basic way of functioning, not thinking, functioning.
Can we go back to the, oh, go ahead, Evelyn. I wanted to go
Yeah.
back to the event though and ask about how the Jews in Holland were feeling.
Yes. Before you do that, Phyllis, I think I have a different explanation, Esther. I think there is a lot of ideology involved. I think the analogy with scapegoating in the 30s is only partly true. Also because the Dutch are not, including the Muslims, are not in a very bad shape in the Netherlands. Whereas
but
the
they
Germans,
think they are.
And that has a lot to do with ideology, I think. And
oh, absolutely, it's part of it. Absolutely, it's part of it. But it's I want for once, I don't, for one moment I want to, because of the extreme left, I think it is a different dynamics that's going on there. If you're looking to Muslims, it's about wanting to be part, here we go again, of the big group of the Ummah. There are especially young Muslims. They don't go to the mosque, but they they smoke and they drink and they don't keep Ramadan, but they hate Jews, and that way, and they are a part of Free Palestine, so that in that way they are at least a little bit part of the Ummah. They're not such a bad Muslim as they would be if that wouldn't be there. And that was explained to me by Jason Walters. And Jason Walters was member of the Hofstad group, who was responsible for killing a very famous producer here, Theo van Gogh.
Theo van Gogh, yeah.
And they also they had made attacks against police and everything. Really bad guys. And in prison, he, because he's very intelligent, he unraveled his own way of thinking back to basis, and then he saw what really happened with him. And that was, it's online. Jason Walters, Jason Way Speaks, it's called in Dutch, Jason Way Spreekt. It was the first time after his de-radicalization that he gave a huge interview, and it was in the NIW. He really explains how the mechanism functions. Very interesting. And yes, it's an ideology, and no, if there is no individual evolution and ontwikkeling. Oh, I lost the word. Development. You will not be able to turn it back.
Phyllis.
And I don't think any education can work against indoctrination that's given from the home.
No.
It has to come out of the individual in later life, when the individual starts questions like, how was I raised? Is this really true? And so on and so forth. And I think that's a very hard way. I'm still working on it. And I'm 60. I'm still working and asking myself, hey, why I'm so angry, or why I'm so sad? Where does that come from? It's hard work. And I don't think everybody will be able to fight that challenge.
So let's talk, though, about how this particular incident, an incident that was dedicating a National Holocaust Museum that had been almost 20 years in the making, felt about this incident at the dedication. How did the Holocaust survivors in Holland feel about what happened?
And the other Jews in Holland.
And you?
I had a surgery. I was invited to go to the synagogue, but I had surgery a few days before. I had a huge black and blue, so I didn't go out. But anyway, I was too much in pain. So I saw it in front of the television. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I could not believe my eyes. And thank God I have Twitter, so I can immediately respond and say, hey, look what's happening here, you know. But a lot of Jews who were watching it at home and saw what was happening, we are in shock. We are in shock. And people want to leave, and people are leaving. They're leaving the Netherlands. And quite frankly, I just came back from Portugal 5 days ago. No, I was there for 5 days. We are doing a huge special on the Portuguese Jewish community, which is growing. It's growing for several reasons.
You mean the Jewish community in Amsterdam, the Portuguese?
No, in Portugal. In
Oh,
Portugal.
okay.
The Portuguese Jewish community is growing. Several reasons, but one of the most important reasons, we were there for 5 days. We did not see one Palestinian flag. We did not see one anti-Israel demonstration. It was a quiet city with relaxed people. Here, I live 200 meters away from the Anne Frank house in the city center, in the Jordaan. 50 meters different from my distance from my house, there's a huge Palestinian flag with a flag of the anarchists, you know, and I have to walk by that every day.
And that's allowed legally?
Yes, it's hanging from their window. You don't do anything about it. And it's all over the city, huh?
There was from many Jewish friends, yes.
Yeah, there was this protest last Sunday, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, with all people coming from Amsterdam West. That's where a lot of Muslims live. They were hanging out of their windows with Palestinian flags. Hanging out of your window is not allowed when you're driving because you need to wear your seatbelt. Yes. They were klaxoning, which is also not allowed if there's no danger.
You mean honking? You mean honking?
Honking, exactly. Sorry, sometimes I'm losing my
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
And more like this, yes? Instead of the police giving them fines, they were facilitated by the police. The police was driving in front of them and in the back of them. And it went on for hours, and I heard them in my street in the city center. I heard the honking for an hour at least. And okay, you might have the right to of your opinion and the right to demonstrate and whatever, but this is crazy. And I really think that since 7 October, the silent majority has seen such a lot, demonstrations in the stations, on the streets, and everywhere with the aggression that is part of that, that they are fed up. They are fed up. And I think you could see that also in the result of the elections here, where the right really won, but they only won after the 7th of October.
Yeah. So you wrote an open letter to the mayor of Amsterdam in which you
Yes.
expressed your anger and criticized her for allowing this to happen.
Mhm.
And Jewish leaders also expressed their criticism.
Mhm.
What should the mayor have done differently, and why didn't she do so? You already mentioned she could have forbidden the demonstration. She could have put it further away. I think she did do all those things when there were protests planned in front of mosques for another
Yes,
occasion,
yes,
right?
yes,
So
exactly. She had the tools. She
why
had the
didn't she do
tools.
it? Why didn't she do it?
I think that she wanted to please not only the Muslim community, but also her very she is herself also from a left-wing party. And there are a lot of left-wing politicians in the town hall. So it's this coming together. And there are also Jews who are participating in these demonstrations. And of course, these are seen as the good Jews. You know, I'm a bad Jew. They are seen as the good Jews, so they are really pampered and everything. I have to, there's somebody ringing already for 5 minutes at the door. Can we stop it for 1 second? Please, I'll be right back. Can we stop the recording for a second? So you see that there's this mix. There's this mix of very left-wing politicians and the Muslims. And as I said, there are Jews who participate. They are calling them the anti-Zionist Jews. These are the good Jews. These are the Jews that are invited to the mayor, and they're only 5% of the Jewish community. But they get a lot of attention, also from the media. You will find them everywhere, on television, in newspapers, because they are saying what a lot of people want to hear. And the majority of the Jewish community thinks completely different and is being cast out. I asked the mayor of Amsterdam if she wanted to do an interview with us, not with a few Jews who are belonging to certain organizations, because I said to her, listen, you can invite 30 very, very important Jews, but you need to speak to the whole of the Jewish community. And the only way she can do that is through our magazine. She refused. And I asked her twice. She refused bluntly. She invited me to be one of the important Jews. And I refused. I said, no, I don't want to be one of the important Jews. And then after such a meeting, you're not allowed to tell anything to anybody because it's secret. I want you to speak directly to the Jewish community. And she refused. The last time she was this afternoon.
So she did make apologies to Rudy Cortisos, the Holocaust survivor.
No, she said she was so sorry that he had to go through this.
Oh, she said she was sorry.
No.
But she didn't say it directly to him. I mean, she didn't apologize.
She visited him the day after, because she knew that this looked bad. And she only said she was so sorry people had to go through such a lot of pain. She wasn't sorry about her policy. No.
And she also talked with Jewish leaders, the Centraal
Yes, the
Joodse
Thursday.
Overleg,
Yes, the Thursday after. And
right?
that's what I was talking about.
But she didn't address the Jewish community in Amsterdam and
No. She
beyond,
refused. Yeah.
who were all shocked.
Yes, and not only in Amsterdam.
No.
All
right.
the Dutch Jews were shocked.
All the Dutch Jews.
Also non-Jews were shocked.
Yeah.
When I put this letter on online, there, thank the Lord, there were a lot of non-Jewish people who said, we're not Jewish and we feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that's really felt wonderful. Yeah.
And also to give some context, there are 30,000 Jews in the Netherlands. Most of them live in Amsterdam.
Mhm.
And
How many people in Holland altogether?
how many Muslims live in Amsterdam?
Oh, in Amsterdam, I don't know, but there are hundreds of thousands.
So
hundreds of thousands.
Exponential larger number of Muslims in her city.
Yeah.
And she left the Jews out there to dry.
Well, that's what I think. Yes. That's I can't have any other conclusion. So all the nice words, you know. I'm sorry, I'm a rather straightforward communicating person. And you can have a lot of beautiful words, but her deeds proved something else.
Yeah. Do you think she made this policy herself for this day, or was she aware of it, or was it people working for her?
Well, if she wasn't aware of it, she shouldn't be on the seat she's sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're really not fit for the job. Okay. If you weren't aware of it, and if you didn't have your people scanning days up front, what are people planning, the demonstrators planning, then you're not fit for the job.
Right.
I think she knew. She later, oh, by the way, she acknowledged that she did know that it was not a spontaneous demonstration. Yes, she started out saying, yeah, but it was sudden and it was a spontaneous demonstration. And that's not the case, because we have the picture in our magazine on TikTok that people say, tomorrow you come at 10:30 to that corner that wasn't reserved for that demonstration. So, and don't lie to us.
So
don't lie to us.
I want to know, where does the Jewish community in Holland go from here?
Good question. I'm sorry, I don't have an optimistic story. There are by the way, the situation in France and in Belgium is much worse, even worse. But if officials like the mayor, like the mayors, don't take a stance, if police and so on don't take a stand, because whenever people want to register an anti-Semitic incident, they are being sent away because it's too much work for the police and so on and so forth. If this development continues, and I wrote that too, within 2 or 3 generations, there won't be any possibility, any future for Jews in the Netherlands. I really don't believe it. Either people assimilate and don't want to have anything to do anymore with Israel or being Jewish because then they're associated with Israel or whatever, or you leave. Or you leave. And this is not only in Europe, in the Netherlands. I think it's all over Western Europe. All over Western Europe. It's very cynical that the Eastern European countries, from where such a lot of anti-Semitism came, are right now the countries, and let's also look at Portugal. Spain and Portugal were the countries from the Inquisition. Yes?
Right.
That these countries right now are the countries that Jews feel most safe in.
Yes, it's very ironic.
Yeah.
And even in Germany, because of Germany's strong policies against anti-Semitism.
They do. And I wish the whole of Europe would look at Germany and say, okay, they know about their moral standards. They've been practicing it for the last 75 years.
They worked on it. Yeah.
They really worked on it.
Right.
Really
And even though they have a
for-
ways to go, they've really tried.
They really did. They really did. Yes.
Evelyn, what questions do you want to ask now?
I think I asked all my questions. I have no more questions.
I think that I've asked basically my questions too. I mean, obviously we could go on for hours, but we want our listeners.
There's one thing. There's one
Good.
thing.
Okay,
one thing.
Evelyn.
I want to commend you, Esther, for writing that open letter to the mayor of Amsterdam, in which you expressed your anger and criticized her policies on the day of the opening of the Holocaust Museum in Amsterdam.
It came straight from the heart.
Because I heard many of my Jewish friends in the Netherlands feel strengthened by your voice. You raised your voice and you said what they felt. And that was so important for the people I heard talk about that. So I want to commend you for that. And it's also hopefully a great inspiration for others to stand up when something like this is happening.
We have to raise our voice. We have to raise our voice. We shouldn't hide. We have to raise our voice. And maybe we'll go down fighting, but then at least we've been fighting. We have to raise our voice.
Yes, and that's why Evelyn and I started this program, to encourage people to speak up. So we hope they'll take your example. Is there anything, last words that you want to add before we thank you and our listeners?
No, thank you very much for your attention. And of course, we're also following the dreadful situations on the American universities. We publish about that too. So we're all in this boat together.
And we have to speak up
together
across the globe, not just what's happening in our individual countries, but we need to speak up across the globe.
Exactly. We have to create our own ummah.
Our own community, right? Our own.
Exactly.
So thank you so much. We thank our listeners. For anyone who wants to know more about Evelyn and myself and our work, you can go to Never Again Is Now podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And as I just said a minute ago, we always end every episode with saying, please speak up against anti-Semitism and all hate.